Alright, today I'm going to be doing a video review of this Vastfire flashlight. This is a tactical single mode flashlight, and the part number for this flashlight is VA-C10. Now before I get into unboxing this flashlight and talking about it in particular, first thing I want to talk about is how this flashlight came to be in my possession. So I've been looking for like a little handheld flashlight to keep in my pocket for some time now. It just so happened that timing worked out perfectly. The company reached out to me, asked me to do a video review in exchange for receiving a free flashlight. So I agreed, and they're gonna get an honest review, and that's what you guys are gonna get as well. So later on in this video, when I do take this flashlight outside, whenever I review something, I like to compare that to something I know and something that I've been using for some time. So in the past, I actually did a video review of this Makita flashlight, and this is a Makita DML-812. So just comparatively speaking, I know these are two completely different products, but we're just gonna kind of compare the light output of this compared to the Makita, and I think we're gonna be impressed with this. Of course, time will tell. So, first things first, let's start unboxing the flashlight, which, a little disclaimer, I have unboxed it already and just tested it out a little bit, so that's why you're gonna see some open packaging. First things first, the flashlight comes in this little box. There is no O-ring on this box, so this is not a waterproof box. It does feel a little cheap, a little chintzy. The latches, you know, it doesn't latch great. You kind of have to maneuver the box to get these latches to re-latch. Personally, I'm trying to be a little bit more environmentally conscious, and I personally prefer them not to have the box, but I can understand for a lot of people they'd appreciate the box. So once you open the box, you will find that there is some foam padding, which that's kind of nice if you're into the box. Here's the flashlight itself. We also have a momentary switch. Take this out. So this momentary switch could be used on something that propels projectiles, if you catch my drift. Nice little button right there. Looks like they have a waterproof enclosure on this momentary switch, so that appears to be nice. Nicely crafted. Everything looks really nice. I approve of the craftsmanship of that. Also in the box, we have a USB battery charger made by Hongdong. Interesting. Of course, it smells plasticky, lightweight, but as long as it charges the batteries, I think that's really what we're concerned about. As for the battery charger, there's like a spring. You can see that spring in there, a little spring-loaded mechanism, which I'm going to be quite honest, that feels extremely cheap. I almost want to say that the spring probably provides the ground for charging the batteries. I'm not sure how long this is going to last, but at least there is a battery charger, and I do like the idea of having the ability to recharge your batteries as opposed to just throwing them out, or hopefully you guys recycle your batteries like I do. So there's a battery right here, but there's also a battery in the flashlight, which when you get your flashlight for the first time, you unscrew the back cap, and there's actually a little piece of paper, or a little piece of material that prevents the battery from making contact with the back of the switch, so the battery doesn't, you know, discharge or accidentally discharge. It's just to make sure that there's no complete circuit in here. So I removed that. So you do have two batteries, which that's pretty awesome, right? Because you can have one battery charging, and if that battery were to die, then you just swap them out, put the new battery in there. So looking at this, I do like the craftsmanship. I like what I'm seeing right now. We have an aluminum bodied flashlight. I do see an O-ring by the threads right here, so that tells me that this should be waterproof. And so far, so good. Now these batteries, they just say Vastfire. There's no other marking, so I'm guessing that the company probably just wrapped their own branding on these batteries. Now, according to the specifications of this flashlight, which I have right here, this is a single mode flashlight, which I actually kind of like, because there's a lot of flashlights on the market that have like 2 or 3 modes, but in order to get back to that previous mode, you got to cycle through all 3. So I do like the idea of this having just one mode. You know, there's a saying in the military, from what a lot of people in the military have told me, they have this acronym called KISS, Keep It Simple, Stupid. So we have a single mode, which I approve of. Claims to put out 1250 lumens. Of course, we have two 3.7 volt, 2600 mAh batteries, which we have no way of knowing if these are actually 2600 without trying to peel back the covering on these batteries. So I guess we're kind of gonna have to take their word for it. It claims to be able to shoot a beam 250 yards. So we're going to test that out later. And also, according to the website, this is an IPX6 waterproof enclosure. And it's also apparently shockproof, which I'm not going to test because I don't want to ruin this beautiful flashlight. So I'm going to throw the battery back in here, screw this back down. Really nice fit, nice machining on the aluminum. That seals up real nice. So you have a green button in the back, a little lanyard. Press the green button. Interesting. Okay, so I just went to press the green button and I had the battery in here backwards and I just switched the battery back around, and it's good to know that it does work even if you put the battery accidentally in the wrong way. There's no instructions to tell you which way the battery goes, but typically in America, like in the bottom down here, I can see that little coil spring, and typically on American-made American flashlights, the flat side of the battery side that does not have the nub, generally goes on that spring side. In this case, with this flashlight, the little nub on the end of the battery actually goes in towards that spring. So that's what you're going to have to do in order to get your flashlight to turn on. So let's try this again. Okay, have that good and snug. And by the way, there are no instructions with this, just in case somebody out there wants to claim that I didn't read the instructions. So let's turn this on real quick. And it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good so far. Of course, we really have to take this outside in the dark to see what this thing can actually do. But just turning on my Makita flashlight for a moment here. Put the Makita flashlight just on the spotlight mode. So this is the Makita. And I gotta say, they're pretty close, pretty similar. This Vastfire light definitely has a wider light. Good, bad, or indifferent. So it should be a pretty nice, or a pretty good competition when we do take these two outside and compare them to one another. Also, I did receive this box when I received the flashlight, and see what this is, but I kind of think I know what this is. So if you do so happen to have something that can propel a projectile, I'd imagine this would be one of your mounting options. So this looks like this mounts right on a rail. And then from there, you have a couple of Allen screws, so you just unscrew these, put it on the body of the flashlight, and then if you so choose, you can also install this momentary switch for projectile application. So I gotta say, craftsmanship of this part is pretty darn sweet. Of course, everything in here is aluminum. That's tight. Why is that tight? So if you were to mount this on a rail, this would be the piece that you'd use to mount it on a rail. I was having a little bit of a hard time trying to adjust this nut, but what you need to do, there's actually springs in here. I don't know if you can see them, but there's springs in there. So what you need to do, you need to kind of compress this, compress those springs, and from there you can spin this nut. And I don't know, maybe there was just a little bit of paint or powder coat or whatever's on this thing that was tripping me up a little bit there. But it is adjustable, and it is a pretty darn smooth mechanism. The springs in there are a nice touch. I gotta say, this is a nicely crafted piece. No complaints here. So curiosity has gotten the best of me. They claim that these batteries are 2600 mAh. So I am going to peel this back, and we are going to see what is actually stamped on these batteries, if anything is actually stamped on here. We have nothing. This is kind of strange to me. I would think that any battery that is made should have a marking of how to dispose of it and what its capacity is. So these batteries, I have to say, are a little bit sketchy. I don't approve of these batteries, but that doesn't mean that they don't work. So again, no instructions with this unit, but at least with this battery charger, it does tell you in the direction of what the battery needs to go. So I can hear that spring stretch. It's a nice tight fit. I want to plug this in and see if this actually lights up. But before we even get there, I noticed another little flaw in this battery charger. If you notice, the head doesn't really line up too well in there. You kind of got to center it. If you got it centered, it's fine. But I mean, the slightest tap and the thing kind of bounces all over the place, so this is definitely a low-grade battery charger. Alright, so let's plug this charger in without a battery first. That is on. And there, oh, we got a flash. There is a very faint green LED on there. Interesting. Okay. Let's put a battery in there and see what happens. It does go to red, so that's a good thing. Hopefully that indicates that the battery is charging. Now if I do fumble around with this, it actually does still seem to make contact with the little nub. It's just not really secure. Still not a huge fan of that, but it works, I guess. So we'll let that sit and charge. So we have unscrewed the battery compartment. Now let's unscrew the head of the flashlight and see if there's some type of O-ring or waterproofing in the front of this. There are these serrations on here, which they are not sharp. If you like them, you do. If you don't, I don't know. But the biggest thing that I like what I'm seeing here is that these serrations protrude past the lens of the light. So if you were to drop this, these serrations in theory should protect whatever type of material they use for that lens, whether it be plastic or glass, which I'm not really sure, kind of hard to tell. I want to say it's plastic though. Pushing on this a little bit, I feel a little bit of movement. I don't see any type of sealant in here, which that could potentially be a weak point. And I do see there is a little O-ring right here, which that's good. So that should seal up, you know, where this lens screws onto the body of the flashlight. But what I get a little bit concerned with is where the lens housing makes contact with the screw-on portion, you know, where the serrations are. So I'm not a gambling man, but if I were to put money on where this flashlight would fail, it would probably be water seeping in from around this lens housing. If I bring it up to the camera, so you can hear that little bit of play in there. So really there should be some type of sealant or O-ring in there, and I'm not seeing either of those, so I kind of want to pop it out, but I don't want to destroy it. Yeah, we're not going to be able to get that out, but again, I'm not seeing any sealant in there, and you can hear that little bit of play in there, so that would be where I would guess that this flashlight would fail. But they do have the O-ring down in there. Real nice, shiny, reflective housing. You have that LED down in the hole there. Pretty nice machining. I don't know, really not too much to say about this. When I do have this screwed back together though, of course I can't push this housing back out, but when I push down on the lens, I'm not feeling any play, so hopefully when it pushes down onto itself, it kind of helps to prevent moisture from entering the housing if you were to drop this in like a bucket of water. But again, that is what I believe to be the weak point of this flashlight. But I will say, it does feel good in the hand. I don't have a scale. I'd estimate it to weigh a little bit under a pound, probably 3/4 of a pound. So, you know, it's a nice flashlight. I'll get a tape measure out. We'll measure the length of it. Length of the flashlight is about 6 1/4 inches from the serrations to the very end of the flashlight. As for the light housing, you're looking at about OD 1 3/4. As for where the momentary switch is, well, it's not a momentary, the push button switch is like 1 1/16. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the dimensions of this light. Just wanted to get my thumbnail for this Vastfire VA-C10 flashlight. So I'm going to put this battery back in the USB charger, charge this up, and then I will catch back up with you guys when it's dark out. All right, it's dark out, we have the two flashlights. We're going to use the Makita DML812 to compare to this little Vastfire flashlight. So I have the camera currently pointed at my shed, which my shed's about 75 yards away. So let's turn on the Makita light and see how it does. Make sure you're in focus here. So as you can see, this is the spotlight function of this Makita flashlight. We have a really nice focus beam that really lights up the shed. We have an outer cone, and then we also have a nice bit of ambient light, as you can see on the tarp right there. So just for comparison, this is the light output of the Makita. It's kind of like more of a, what's the right word? It's more of a yellowish light. So let me shut this off and we'll turn on the Vastfire flashlight now. And I gotta say, this thing puts out just about the same amount of light output as that Makita, if not, it's a pretty close race, because this is definitely a brighter white. This is more of like a daylight light, as opposed to that Makita that puts out like a little bit more of a yellowish light. Same thing, we have that nice focus beam, but the outer ring is definitely a bit wider than the Makita. And if you look at the tarp with this Vastfire light, it does throw out that ambient light. It's kind of in ridges, it's not as even, but you gotta remember, this is a pocket-sized flashlight. You know, this isn't that monstrous Makita light. In terms of how far I can see with this right now, you're not really going to be able to see it too well on camera, but I'm pointing this back in the woods, and I think it's pretty safe to say that this is throwing light probably about 200 yards. I mean, you definitely could see this light at 250 yards, but it throws a really nice beam down to like 200 yards. Beyond that, I'd say you definitely start losing a bit more light. But let's turn back on this Makita light. Okay, so side by side, I mean, they're a little bit different. The Vastfire light on the left, the Makita light on the right. I'd say the Makita probably has just a little bit more power. But again, I mean, look at the size of the Makita, you know, compared to this Vastfire light. This Vastfire light is super small, fits in your pocket. You tell me, Makita on the right, Vastfire on the left. Rings are pretty close, but, you know, that outer ring is definitely a bit wider on the Vastfire, which I do like. So overall, I gotta say I'm really happy with the light output of this light. I mean, this is a pretty darn good light. I'd rate this probably 7 out of 10 stars. Solid little light.